Texas and Australia have a lot in common, as overheard today on the K-12 Engineering Education Podcast. I'm Pius Wong here in Austin, Texas. My guest today is Mr. Chris Perkins, an elementary and primary school STEM teacher outside Adelaide, South Australia. Despite any differences in landmass or population, both Australia and Texas share similar goals in engineering education. Hear about solar cars, changing Australian national curriculum, and more next.
But basically my story is I only got into teaching, about 12 years ago now. So I've had a whole range of different life experiences. You know, I started off delivering milk bottles, running around the streets.
No kidding.
Back in the early 80s. And then I went to trade school and became a welder, and I've driven those big 50-ton cat trucks and moored ships and been an out-of-school hours care director and things like that.
Wow. Been
married and, still married. And I have 2 adult children and a granddaughter. So my life has been quite wonderful and diverse and rich with varied experiences. And it was only, as I said, 12 years ago that I got into teaching. And so I guess I bring a different headset to teaching from people who maybe have always been in the education system.
Yeah.
And so when the opportunity for STEM came up in my school, at Keithcot Farm Primary School in South Australia, I thought this is right in my alley. I love this hands-on, the problem-solving approach, using the higher order critical thinking skills that sometimes with IT in this day and age don't always occur.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that flips back to my trade school days. That's why I love STEM. But as it's sort of new in South Australia, I've been sort of doing my own research with podcasts, online searches, to try to find out where we are in South Australia in comparison to, other countries and even states around the world, to see where I need to be going with my teaching of STEM, because I've got a good idea and I think I'm going in a positive direction, but I want to make sure. And I think it's always good as an educator to ask yourself that question, is what I'm doing the right thing at this stage?
Yeah.
And I guess that's why I use podcasts. I listen to them to go, oh, yeah, I'm sort of doing that. And, okay, I can. Well, you know how we do that as educators?
Yeah, try to incorporate everything and in your limited time, try to get the best of what you can do in the classroom. What are some of the other podcasts that you listen to for ideas?
Well, there's STEM Every Day,
mm-hmm.
and then there's different educational podcasts, just general education, not necessarily STEM focused. And with STEM, incorporating science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, that is a broad sweep of skill development that we have to cover. And so I try to upskill as much as I can on what everyone else is doing. And sometimes, like any educator, you think, yes, I think I've got this. Sometimes I think, I really need to pick my game up on that.
Sure.
And then other times you think, actually, yeah, I'm pretty good on this. I think I've got that part of the STEM education handled. Like you think, I've got technology handled really well. I incorporate a range of different programs. Problem solving is what I really try to focus on in the classroom. I give the kids a brief on something. An example was the students had to build a bridge. It had to span 30 centimetres, and it had to take as much weight as physically it could take.
That's a classic one, yeah.
Well, it's funny because I found a story about the Brooklyn Bridge called The 21 Elephants basically what happened was I purchased 21 toy elephants, and that was the first assessment criteria, that actually the bridge had to be able to hold 21 elephants. And then from there we went on to different weight amounts. So I just had Ziploc bags with sand in them, different weights, and then we got to 1.75 kilos, which is pretty good with just pop sticks and masking tape.
No, I would have loved to have done that in my school. I never did that when I was growing up. Did you do stuff like that when you were getting educated? I assume in Australia.
Yes, very much. It was actually more hands-on back in the 70s. That's how old I am, because I'm 54. And so we were very hands-on. And as I said, I went to trade school, and I loved trade school. I just thought, this is my niche. You know, cutting, welding, measuring, using all the skills necessary, and just being able to build and create something from raw products. And so I guess I have that headset still, that I think students need that opportunity to be able to develop some life skills. Not only for now, of course, but we don't know what the future is for our workforce. And so if we can design those critical thinking skills within students now, then that will be second nature to them when they enter the workforce. Yeah. Whatever that may be, or whatever that may look like in 10, 15 years' time.
I'm curious about more of your background and how that makes you think about these things. I think that's pretty spectacular that you're a welder. The few times that I tried welding, I wasn't very good at it, so I'm very impressed. But the thing is that
it depends on which welding technique you're thinking of, whether it's the arc welding or gas oxyacetylene welding.
I think I was doing arc welding. This is how little I knew about it. All I knew was that, gosh, what was happening? I don't even know why I had a welding machine. We were trying to set up a lab somewhere, and I think we were trying to bond some metals to build like a test. But a lot of the stuff that I had done was very trying to figure it out as you go along, which may not be the best way to do things.
Oh, but trial and error is the ultimate human development,
True.
Isn't it? I think we've done that from the moments of time.
For sure, as long as the error doesn't result in setting the building on fire, that kind of thing.
Okay.
I remember hearing you just said something really interesting. You said you've only been a teacher for 12 years, which to a lot of people, especially in the US, that's a really long time. Because I don't know if it's the same in Australia, but there's like 50% attrition rate for new teachers here? Like in 5 years, new teachers will leave teaching. So to say that you've been teaching for 12 years is pretty good. And I know there's more experienced teachers as well, but you also said that STEM teaching was new for you, or new in Australia, relatively speaking.
Yes.
So how would STEM, where you are in your school, how is that different from, say, the traditional education that used to be in your schools?
Well, if I go back to the 1970s, there was a lot more hands-on activities within the primary school, which is, of course, where I teach.
Yeah.
So I teach from foundation 4.5 years old up to about 12 years old. Mm-hmm. I can remember always doing hands-on activities, whether they were craft, whether they were technology-based. But when my own children went through, the hands-on component seemed to change a little bit. And I think that was because of the introduction of computers.
Okay.
And so I think, there's only so much time within a lesson that you've got to then sort of just switch around. So I think we lost a lot of the hands-on activities, and it went to computing, which is fine. Technology is a wonderful device, and it certainly has improved our lives a lot, in the 15 years that I've sort of become more attached to technology, the digital technology. And I think that we lost then, obviously with just time constraints, the opportunity for children to experiment and just experiment with various technologies, not just digital, to learn and grow, and I guess gain the skills that I guess I took for granted. The amount of times that in my sort of 12 to, I guess, 13 years, because I was an outside school hours care director for a while, I would take in power tools, for example. And I found that, one, a lot of children had not had first-hand experience with using power tools. Two, there's obviously some safety aspects that need to be taken into account within any educational setting, or even home, but certainly educational setting as a teacher or educator. And I think that those things have impacted upon the use of hand tools, power tools within schools. I think that's where a lot of it has changed with work health and safety, which is a good thing. And I think people are just now a lot more conscious of, a spinning disc, whereas back in my day, it didn't seem to have the same level of priority at schools. And so we were able to do so much more. And I often look back and go, how have I still got 10 fingers? Because the things that we did, and some of the practical jokes we would play at trade school on each other, you would not be allowed to do in this day and age.
Right. But in trade school, you were older than your students are now in your primary school. Okay. Do you introduce power tools and things like that for your students?
Not currently, no. Because it's just time. If there was an actual real life requirement within my lessons for power tools, then I would introduce it. I haven't got down that pathway yet, because I've been teaching STEM since 2017, and that's when it got introduced into my school. Now, other schools had started only a couple of years before that, so we're pretty close to being right on the money, if you like. And I just haven't got around to that sort of higher skill development.
I'm sure there's lots of other things that you have to prioritize. I know that here the teachers always talk about how state standards and national standards can sometimes be overwhelming. I don't know if that's the same in Australia, or is it required to have certain technology standards in primary school where you are?
Look, we use the Australian curriculum. That's been in for, nearly sort of 10 years. New South Wales in Australia has been our leader in education here in Australia, and they've really been the ones to have pushed for the Australian curriculum. They were the first ones that pushed our Year 7s into high school. South Australia will push our Year 7s into high school in 22. So we're the last state to do that. And so the curriculum is quite diverse, because we've not only got technologies, we've got digital technologies. I teach STEM as a non-instructional time subject, so a NIT subject, where teachers get a lesson off to do other things. And so I get one 50-minute lesson per week with each class. I teach from reception or foundation up to Year 7. So I've got a broad range of abilities to cater for, quite often within the same day. And that's what's tricky. And I would love to add a lot more complexity via different technologies and power tools. But just setting up a lesson when I go from foundation, 4.5-year, 5-year-olds, up to 12-year-olds, can be a bit tricky logistically.
Oh, I'm sure, yeah. And you have a lot of students in your school. Maybe tell me more about your students. Is it a huge school? Is it a urban area?
Yes, it's just north of Adelaide. It's very much suburbia, I think you would refer to it as in America. It would be more middle class. We are considered quite a good school from that point of view. Attendance is very good, behaviour is very good. And it is, in fact, a really lovely school in quite a picturesque part of North Adelaide. So that's been good. And we've got about 440 students enrolled. So I don't know if that's big for your school.
I think for Texas, it's probably a little small, but Texas has everything huge. But that seems like you have a good chance to get to know your students.
It is. Well, doesn't Texas have a larger population than Australia?
I'm not sure.
You've got to think about, I think you've got about 28 million in
That sounds
Texas,
about right,
and we've only
yes.
got about 25 million in Australia.
All of Australia, wow. But you can beat us in landmass, I guess.
Yeah. That's right. Yeah.
When you started talking about computing too, I know that that's a point of pride and contention, I think, over here, where, people are very into computers and software and computing and all of that because it seems like that's what the economy is going to require. But I think what you said earlier kind of rings true, that you lose some of that hands-on experience. And I don't know if you consider computing if you consider computer projects hands-on learning. I think a lot of teachers wouldn't. How do you feel about things like screen time for young students? Is that beneficial?
I think like any piece of technology, it has a place. And I think that we just need to find a balance. And I think that's where everyone struggles. Where is the balance for screen time? I don't think anyone would live their lives now without some form of digital technology having a major impact upon them. I think it is important for students to learn those skills, to learn how to do internet searches correctly, to research, to present, to self-educate like I have done, using digital technology. I think that's critical in this day and age. I think there just needs to be a balance, and I think every culture around the world will find that balance different. And I think that's the tricky thing, to find what works within your environment. And I think it changes from the junior primary levels, so from 3.5 up to about 8-year-olds. We need to have maybe less digital technology and more hands-on. We do a lot more now play-based learning in junior primary. And then in the middle to upper years of primary school, as we would call it, I think you call it elementary school over there. Yeah, then by all means, digital technology should be used more and more and relied upon more and more. And I think because that ultimately will be the student's future. I think that's ultimately what education should be about, skilling our young people so they will not only survive in the future but thrive and, in fact, create their future with digital technologies. When you have a look at all of the different commercial enterprises out there that use and are digitally based, they don't exist, if you like, in the real world as much. They've got more of a digital footprint rather than they've got a sort of a physical footprint, and I think that's the wonder of digital technology. But with that, then of course, if you have access to the world, then you have access to the world both in the positive and sometimes the negative aspects of the world. So I think that's where a balance is always going to be.
How do you find that balance? So you have a lot more experience with younger students. I work with older students, so I don't even know. I just take for granted that when people come to me that they already have some kind of digital literacy, for example, how to use the computer, how to find sources, even coding. Like there's assumptions about basic knowledge of computer code. How do you know what that right level of digital instruction is to give students of different ages?
What I do as a teacher is I always plan a year ahead, if you like. So I can see what my little foundation students are this year, and I'll start planning their work for year one. So I have a look at what they're doing now, and then I start designing some learning opportunities. And as I go through this year, I then modify the planning for next year. I go, I was thinking we could do B-bots in reception, and I was thinking that we could do coordinates, X, Y axis, create maps. And then as we go through, I might go, now that might be a little high for the year ones, but that might be perfectly targeted for the year two skill development. And so then I'll modify it. And so really, at the end of this year, I should have, and I have most of, next year already sort of the skeleton planned out. And then as any good teacher, you begin a lesson and then you modify it and adapt it to what's happening in the real moment. But so I use, I guess, my prior knowledge with the students, where they're at, for any future planning. I like the B-bots for junior primary. I find they're simplistic, they're easy, they're durable.
I don't actually know about the B-bots. What are
the B-bots? Oh,
yeah.
Okay. So the B-bots are a little character that is designed to look like a bee. There you go, its name.
Oh,
you can get both yellow and blue now. And basically they are used for basic coding.
Okay.
So they have 4 directional arrows, forward, backwards, left and right. They have an activator, a go button. They've got a stop and a pause buttons. And that's, I find, as a really lovely piece of digital technology, that is a wonderful introduction because, one, it looks really cute. And so for junior primary, that's a really good hook to get the kids in. It is simple to use. And as I said, they're durable should they get dropped, because with junior primary, they will be dropped. And so, well, fine motor skills are still developing. And I find that it is just one of the easiest ways for students to get into basic programming, the coding. And because it is so simple with just simply the 4 directional buttons and then the activate button, the go button, they can do it quite easily. And to be honest, once I've shown the students once, they're usually off and running really easy with them. And then I basically increase the complexity of the lessons, of the learning that I want them to do. Mm-hmm. And I usually set like a little, like a racetrack up, and they've got a program around a whole variety of different
It sounds like you have an opportunity for competitions if you wanted to, and lots of things. You know, I just Googled the B-bot right now, and yes, I can attest to the fact that it looks very cute. It looks comparable to like the Ozo bots that I've seen my nephews and other teachers use and stuff like that.
Yep. And it is that cute factor. For junior primary, it's very important that the kids go, oh, look at that. And, you know, that's the little face on it is very cute. Simple to use. It's absolutely really quite simple. And as I said, they're very durable. You know, the B-bots get dropped on a regular basis. Yeah. And they seem to just keep coming back. I mean, we do lose a few. I think in the last 3 years that I've used the B-bots, I've lost 5 B-bots. So that's not bad when I'm using them for a couple hundred students per year.
Yeah, wow. No, that's pretty good. You know, it sounds really helpful. It sounds like you're saying look at where your students are and know where you want them to go, and you're trying to fill that gap. You know, you're reminding me of something else that I am wondering, besides advice for teachers, you're making me think of what advice might you have for those technologists out there creating things like the B-bot or other software that's supposed to be for students and teachers. What makes a good piece of educational technology good? Because it sounds like you like the B-bot. I don't know if there's other tools or things out there for today, beyond power tools or whatever, or maybe including power tools. What pieces of technology are really great? What should we know about? And I don't know if you want to bash any technology, but what isn't so great, and why is it good and why is it bad?
Well, look, I'm a big fan of Lego, and I love the EV3 Mindstorm Lego, the intelligent bricks, and we've made the robots, or one of the many robots that you can make with the Lego Mindstorms. And the beautiful thing about the Lego Mindstorms is that the usage is so broad. You know, you can use it to make a very simplistic device, and then you can make it so it's quite a complex robot that will undertake a variety of complex functions using different sensors and switches. And so it's, for my year levels, it's almost unlimited. So I must say we do use the Lego Mindstorms kits a lot, and they are just wonderful. And again, they add Lego a level of complexity, because, and you can adjust that level of complexity quite easily. For example, if you did you know the Lego Mindstorms at all?
Yeah, we used to use the old ones. I barely used the newer EV3s, but I when I did try it, I really liked the upgrade compared to the old stuff. The software and the hardware both were much easier to use, I thought. Kind of expensive, but I think that's because it's Lego.
educational.
Yeah,
As soon as you add that word
right.
educational, the price tends to sort of pop up a bit. Yeah. If you want to make it reasonably simplistic, then you can use the iPads to do the software programming.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to increase the complexity, then you can use the programming on the brick itself, because that's almost like the old DOS computer programming. You've got to go up through the various fields. And I really found that for complexity, the on-brick programming is a way of upskilling very, very quickly. Whereas if you have a group of students that are struggling with the programming part, then using the iPad is so much simpler because everything is visual. Everything is right there in front of you and you can just click and drag. And so that makes it a lot easier. And we've been using those in the last couple of years, and I'll continue to use them because I think that the learning from the Lego Mindstorms are just wonderful. We made a robotic arm this year, for example, using the Lego Mindstorm kits, and they had to pick up various objects from one point and put it across onto a little platform.
Wow! Yeah.
Without touching the platform, and we got down to we started off with the like a larger plastic red ball, and the students had to design the claw. And then we moved right down to the little rubber tyres that Lego use. And so the students had to redesign the claws, reset up the experiments, do their observations, see what worked, what didn't work, why didn't it work, and then make their adjustments to either redesigning the claws to pick it up, and then sort of look at the programming part to, pick it up from point A correctly and put it down correctly. And the brief I gave them is they couldn't drop it, because I said it's almost, you've got to pretend that you're picking up a piece of glass. And then I used the example that, on a robotic production line, you want the car door to be placed exactly in the correct position. You don't want the robot to be putting the door on the roof, because that's not going to help anybody. And so that's important. And so the students were using the Lego Mindstorms. They had a great time with them. I can even send you some vision if you like. Of the robotic arm and what some of the students did. It's really lovely, and so I like that. So for me, as we've only just started, I think BBots, the Lego Mindstorms, iPads really have been sort of the mainstays of what I use. Yeah. Next year, our school's hoping to get into 3D printing, so we've done some training this year, and we're hoping to get some printers next year. So that will be a new sort of pathway to take, because I think that is also going to be one of the future industries. 3D printing. Sure. I love 3D printing. I don't know a lot about it. I've only just done some training, but it's very exciting.
I'm sure you'll like it. Like I remember doing it for different things, including for engineering stuff, and it's always pretty entertaining. I think it takes a long time to build stuff, but hopefully the technology will get better and you can do that.
But that's more the sort of the quality, isn't it? With the printing, you sort of, like anything, you've got to sacrifice time if you want a higher quality product. If you want a not such a high quality product, then you can increase the speed and things like that.
Is there any special view that South Australia or Australia in general has towards STEM these days, or engineering education?
And I think Australia always has been a country of, find solutions to. We seem to have found a lot of solutions to different problems. South Australia, for example, we invented the rotary Hills hoist. Hills was a guy that designed a clothesline, which, to be honest, was in most back gardens of Australians. I don't know if you know it, but it's basically a clothesline that's of a square construction with wires running around the four main arms. It could be raised and lowered either via gears, so a gearing mechanism and a handle, and you just wound it. But there were hydraulic models, like a car jack. And so it was quite fascinating. So if you Google Hills hoist, rotary hoist, you'll find some information on that. We're still sort of young here. We're only sort of a couple of 100 years old, so we're still problem solving a lot of issues. We're still, finding a lot of very unique solutions. I think the lawnmower is a good one.
Wait, is that Australia? I had no idea. Is that an Australian invention or?
I think it is. Yes, I've seen some of the early ones, and they're reasonably simple. And then of course they've become a bit flashier, and now of course you can get electric ones. You see, that's the beautiful thing about the technology. And by problem solving, we've gone from the old petrol, although they are still the most common over here, to the electric ones. And the electric ones seem to work really, really well. I'm very impressed with it's actually the battery power, isn't it? We're increasing the efficiency of battery power with lithium ion. And that's, of course, what's helping even solar cars or electric cars and things like that. So that's all happening, which is very exciting. We've just had the solar car challenge down here. I don't know if you know of that.
No, I guess you have a lot of space for that kind of challenge.
We do. They drive from Darwin, which is, of course, on the northern point of Australia, down to Adelaide, one of the southern points, and where I live. And it's we get competitors from around the world.
Oh, I'm sure. Is there a way that people can monitor that? I'm curious. I've ever seen it, but I'm wondering if it's on YouTube or something.
I do believe they do. Each team has its own sort of website. If you Google or internet search Solar Car Challenge Australia, you will see people sit inside them and they drive them from Darwin down to Adelaide.
Wow.
I've driven from Alice Springs, which is in the centre of Adelaide, Australia, to Adelaide, and that's about 16 hours.
Wow.
So to go from Darwin, I've never actually driven all the way up to Darwin, so it's quite a way in some very hot climate.
Right.
I imagine.
There's nothing in between, right?
Yeah, look, there are small communities along the road. Sort of our petrol stations are sort of the main towns, or the town is built really around that petrol station. I actually taught for a little while in the Aboriginal lands, and that was a fascinating and wonderful experience. And that was one very steep learning curve.
Sure.
And you're right, there's not a lot out there. But what I found as driving out there is that the landscape does change. You think, it's going to be sort of desert all the way, but actually the different flora and fauna changes depending on how dry or otherwise the environment is. And so I think if we teach students to observe, we pick up those changes. And that's what I found, because I was expecting more desert, or as we would consider what is deemed to be a desert. Yeah. And I think you'd probably find the same in Texas. You might go to parts of Texas which have a higher rainfall, or parts that might have less rainfall. And so your flora and fauna change, don't they?
Yep, definitely that same north to south variation where it can snow all the way up north close to Oklahoma. And then you go down to the border with Mexico, and it's a very different environment. In fact, you're just reminding me how much I think even Texas is driven towards engineering by certain things, by its climate kind of driving solar energy research here, or oil. Oil is a huge industry here. And then here in Austin, Texas, there's just a whole bunch of tech companies here for whatever reason. I guess programmers just like to accumulate around this area. But I don't know. I'm wondering, I know Australia is big on energy and renewable energy too. I'm curious if you feel like that's like a hot topic in education circles or in engineering circles over there.
I think it is. Renewable energy over here, certainly with solar power, but also wind generation, is becoming, I think, one of the largest, or maybe not the largest, but maybe the quickest growth industry.
Sure.
Apparently, we use a lot of corrugated iron for our roofing over here. Mm-hmm. And they've one of the unis here, I believe, have designed a way of making that iron sheet and impregnating the photoelectric components in there.
Oh, wow.
So as you put up a sheet of iron, it is in fact a solar panel. So instead of tacking on a solar panel as a separate entity, you'll just put on a roofing sheet, which will generate electricity.
I need that in my house.
Yeah, look, it would be wonderful. I mean, that's just great technology, and we do seem to be driving a lot of that over here. But then we've got a lot of sun over here. I mean, we've got this beautiful natural resource. We might as well use it. I think there's also a real movement of people wanting to leave a smaller carbon footprint. Mm-hmm. That's also driving it. Industry's getting behind it, of course, which is always so important to make sure that we've got those educational links to industry. And so industry's driving it through and with the universities over here, which is a wonderful collaboration. And then, of course, we have our wind turbines because we have massive corridors of wind, which can just be harnessed. We've also got the coastline, of course, where you tend to get more winds. So we've got that sort of natural resources that we can use. I'm a bit, curious about why we don't use more wave energy, whether there's something in that technology that you might know of, Pius.
Only a little bit. I know, I've heard that the technology is just not there yet. They're trying to harness that energy. I know that in Texas, they're trying to look at that as well. Okay. But for whatever reason, I guess it's not as efficient. So that's something that if anyone can send me tips, maybe they can educate me on the topic. Do you find that enthusiasm trickles down or is just as strong in primary school or in education, not just in industry and universities?
Definitely the enthusiasm's there and the interest is there. I think like any educational resource, it sort of comes and goes. You get this sort of spurt of enthusiasm and then everyone's buying the solar kits. And then after a couple of years, it sort of wanes a little bit and something new sort of backfills that spot. And I must say, my 12 years and your comment earlier about 12 years is actually quite a long time. Yeah, I guess from that point of view, I guess because I feel old, I think 12 years is still such a small component of my life. But yeah. I think with education, you tend to get things in more cycles. So there's a boost in renewable energy at the moment. So I guess schools and education try to reflect what happens in society. Yeah. So we go down that line, and then maybe in a couple of years' time, wave energy, water energy will be, or hydro energy in general will be the new thing. And so maybe there'll be hydro kits that we'll work on with the kids. And so I think that's the one thing I find with education. Everything seems to be cyclic. I don't know about yourself. Have you found that in the older years?
I think so. But see, I've only been in actual education, actually teaching people since like 2010. And so that's not a very long time as well. And I've been doing engineering during that whole time. So I haven't been doing it all the way. But I do think that there is a push for more hands-on learning, I think. And I think that was definitely the trend in the past, and it's finally coming back. But in a lot of ways, I don't know what's going ahead. I feel like I haven't been in it long enough to see education as a very slow cycle, I guess. Like, what do you see as an upcoming hot topic in education or in STEM education? Like, I know computing is it right now, for example, and maybe even renewable energy, that kind of stuff. But what do you foresee being more interesting to people?
I think, well, we're still STEM over here, so we're still science, technology, engineering and math. I think the arts will come into that, will make it STEAM. I don't know if STEAM is big in America.
It kind of, yeah, it depends on where you go.
And I think that they will be adding that creativity part, and I think that will change the landscape somewhat. Every child will bring their own unique perspective on it, and so I've already got students who are quite creative in what they do. I've got students who just like to do the very basics, if you like, the nuts and bolts of whatever the task may be. I think driving creativity within STEM learning will be the next thing or the next part of the cycle that we will look at over here in Australia. And I think that is important because at the end of the day, we want our students to be able to create, not just reproduce or replicate what they know now, but actually think to a point where they can say, here's a new concept, let's do this, and
Yeah.
actually then really drive innovation for the future. I think that will be our big thing. Now, whether I'm right or wrong, I'm not sure, but I'm happy to have a go.
Yeah. You're making, I think you're right, because like you're reminding me of all the people who say like, yeah, we have to be more creative, that we're going to build robots that can do all the repetitive things. And so we have to find something else to keep us going. And you're also making me think that actually one of the things I think will be a trend, even more so than it is now, is just teaching our engineers and our scientists to really critically evaluate, I guess, scientific sources of information, just because with that whole trend of what is so-called fake news today, I think that extends, of course, to newspapers and journalism, but I'm seeing that critique increasingly to things in the sciences. Like, should we trust this research paper that was just published, or do we trust, this scientific organization if they're getting funded by some other group? I don't know. I'm just seeing a lot more questioning of even scientific sources. I don't know if it's being questioned really well, but I feel like the trend will be to hold engineers and scientists to like this higher standard of defending their credibility, I guess. I don't know.
I think you're right there. I think it's very important that we use reliable and credible sources that's based upon the scientific method of developing a hypothesis, testing it vigorously, and then, being able to understand, explain, and present those facts. I think that is a part that we need to. I think, as I mentioned earlier, with having access to the world's information, sometimes that information tends to be a bit dodgy. And yet what's interesting is sometimes that dodgy information comes up first. And so kids, certainly in the early years, they just grab the first one that comes up. And
that's fascinating.
Okay, let's have a look down. Let's scroll down the page a bit more. Let's investigate a little bit further.
No, that's fascinating because, yes, I see YouTube videos, for example, that I'm sure kids watch. I know that YouTube apparently, at least in the US, is like the number one entertainment source for young children. And they might see these YouTube videos just saying blatantly wrong things about scientific phenomenon. And I don't know if they trust you as the teacher more than the internet as a whole. Like the first thing that comes to my head is a series of baking videos, for example. They're just these viral videos about, I don't know, how to do a chemical reaction to make some kind of food. And it's just totally made up, or it's totally wrong. And I don't know if kids believe this. So it just makes me think, like, in the future we're going to have technology to lie better, So I don't know how you combat that. How do you teach your kids to have that scientific method or critical thinking skills, or the being able to do their own design process to overcome all the lies that may be out there?
I think that you really do I try to get the kids to question it. And if it doesn't seem right, then it might not be right. Now, there might be aspects of it that are correct, but the whole thing together actually doesn't work. I guess because I've always worked with junior primary, I always say to the kids, trust your guts. Trust your guts. Your guts don't tend to lie. And if something is too good, and to be honest, we use YouTube over here a lot. I'll use it as a demonstration for something, but I will check it out. I won't just take the first one that pops up.
Sure.
So I do my research, and that's really, I think, important for students to learn. Just do the research. It's like anything. You don't just walk into a library and grab the first book off the shelf and say, this is it. This is the meaning of the world. They actually have to do some research. They have to start to categorize and understand what they want. Quite often it's really defining the question that they want to ask.
What do you mean by that?
Well, you've got to ask the right question sometimes to get the right answer. And in engineering, for example, you design something that is very specific.
Okay.
It might be quite a complex engineering process, but the outcome might be very, very simple. but you've got to ask the right question. I know it was one of your podcasts on validation and verification.
Verification and validation. You might verify that you meet your design specs, but your design specs don't meet any of what your customer really wants, for example.
Yes. And so that's asking that right question of, okay, the customer says they want, something to go from point A to point B, but in actual fact, what they're looking for is X, Y, Z. And that's, I think, up to the educated, all the educators, engineers, to actually sometimes guide people's sort of creative thinking into a more of a logical, critical thinking process. And that's what I got out of those podcasts, because we all want something, but, is it actually what is going to meet your needs? It's a bit like the old, doing the old needs assessment or needs analysis. That used to be sort of the big term when I was doing my Bachelor of Management many years ago. What is it you really want? You think you want this, but in actual fact, what you want is that. And it's asking those questions to get the right information.
They still teach that in mechanical engineering graduate school, I can tell you that, because doing a customer needs analysis is one of the first things you got to do to not waste your time as an engineer. So I think that's a common thing in all these different fields. Yes.
People have big ideas, which is wonderful, and we need those big ideas. That's that creativity. But engineers, they've got to make it all work. You can think you want, this wonderful monorail, but how's that all going to hold up, and how's it going to work under certain stresses and strains and with certain environmental conditions and loads put on it? Like we recently here in Adelaide, we bought some trams, wonderful trams from Germany, but they didn't have air conditioning in them, and the windows didn't open, and in over 30-degree heat, we were getting cooked.
Wow.
as patrons, and so they had to quickly go back and redesign and put some air conditioning inside them. So whoever did the need analysis on the trams here in Adelaide didn't take into account the environmental conditions that were different between Adelaide and Germany. And it seems so simple at that, and we can sort of snigger at that now, but someone just didn't ask that question. Is this tram good for going through snow or in 38-degree heat?
I keep going back to the fact that you've been a teacher for, in my view, a pretty good long time, but you had all this other experience. Do you have advice for people who are new to the education world?
I guess it depends on where they are in their life, but I think always just be open-minded. Embrace change. Change is, I think, the only constant. Be confident in your own core skills. Accept that you will have strengths in some areas and limitations in others. Be prepared to rely on your strengths, but also be open to develop new skills and new opportunities. I think at the end of the day, we cannot stand still. And I think that for some people who may have been in education all of their life, they get very used to that one culture of education. I guess because I've worked in a whole myriad of different work environments, I guess I can see the best bits out of a lot of different industries. But just be open-minded, just be open to change, just be open for things that are new and different, and I guess be curious about things. And, we're looking at 3D printing. I can see the potential for 3D printing, and I just think, I've got all these wonderful ideas. Then I've got to take those wonderful ideas and I've got to, if you like, do a needs analysis on them and go, well, what does the Australian curriculum say that my students need to learn? Because there's no good me going, let's design a beautiful castle, 3D printing, but there's very little learning for the students.
Yeah.
So I need to then take my wonderful enthusiasm and big ideas and then go, how is this going to help my students learn? And fit it into the Australian curriculum, along with the critical creative thinking continuum that we have over here. And just be open, I think, is, I guess, the one thing I would offer. And I think that also listen to others. I think listen to others. You might not always act upon the information that you hear, but listen to others. And I love that. I think that's one of the things that I love. I love the diversity of education and the people that are in the educational system over here. And I love to hear about people who have been in education for 30 years. And you go, wow, 30 years doing the same job. But of course, as we know, in education, it's not the same job because a different cohort of students, sometimes weekly, but at least every year. And so it's those sorts of things. But I also think have a passion for what you do. If you lose that passion, then look for another way to challenge yourself. That would be it.
That's good advice. That's excellent advice, Chris. Okay. Well, speaking of listening to others, I'm glad that I can hear some of what you're saying. I really appreciate that. I feel like we've been talking for a little while, which is good for me, but I don't want to take up all of our time as well. Hey,
well, see, it's morning over here, so now it's 9 a.m. for me. But about 5:30.
It's 5:30 here. Yeah. In fact, I got a phone call in another half an hour. It's like,
you've already done a day's work, Pius.
Exactly. You're just getting started.
That's right. And I've actually got a day off today.
Oh, you have a day off?
I only work 4 days a week.
Oh, well, wow. I'm jealous of that as well. Is that common? Is that a regular thing?
Yes. Over here in teaching, we have quite a high percentage of part-time workers.
Okay.
And so usually it's anywhere from about 3 to 4 days is probably, I guess, the average of part-time.
Oh, wow.
We've got teachers. You can do a minimum of 2 days within South Australian education system. You have to do a minimum of 2 days. But so I'm very lucky, yes.
No, that's great. And it's a true day off. It's not like you're preparing lessons or something.
No, I will do some work a little bit later.
I see.
Because this term we're doing origami and we're making these complex 3D shapes. And so I try to get my skill level ready to go for that. But I'll do a little bit of that later on. But no, it's purely a day off. Quite often I'll spend it with my granddaughter, which is really lovely. That's mainly why I took the day off. To spend time with my granddaughter.
Well, you go enjoy the rest of your day off.
Thanks.
I really appreciate you taking some time, Chris. And I hope we can talk again.
Yeah, look, that'd be lovely, bud.
That was my guest, Chris Perkins, teacher at Keithcot Farm Primary School in South Australia. Chris sent me a video of his student's Lego robot arm picking up a ball. Check it out in the show notes or find it on the podcast website at k12engineering.net. That's k12engineering.net. There you can also find links to many other things that we mentioned today. Thanks again to Chris for speaking, and thank you also to my supporters and awesome monthly donors on Patreon. Your donations are a big message that you like what I do here, and if you like it too and you want to say so with $1 a month, you can donate by pledging at patreon.com/Pios Labs. That's Pios with an O. And you can also support me by checking out my book, Engineer's Guide to Improv and Art Games. All this information is also at the website k12engineering.net. The K-12 Engineering Education Podcast is an independent production of Pios Labs in Austin, Texas. Thanks for listening. Happy holidays, everyone, if you're listening around this time of December 2019. I just wanted to remind you that our live podcast session at South by Southwest EDU is slated for March 2020. You should join us. You can register for South by Southwest at their website, sxsw.com. We have some panelists lined up to talk about how to develop a career in educational technology. Rachel is moderating, and it should be fun. If you're coming this year, please say hey. Also, this is the last episode of the 2019 season. It's been a busy year for me, and I'm still teaching. 2019 is pretty crazy. It's season 4 of this show. I'm really grateful I've been able to do this podcast for 4 years. I can thank so many people who helped me do this. First of all, my partner, Jay, thank you. I love you. I literally could not do this without you. Thanks, of course, also to my co-host and sometimes improv partner, Rachel, who's totally been a guide in my educational growth over the years, giving me her teacher tips when I was an unknowing engineer. Thank you to Southern, my other sometimes co-host, fellow mechanical engineer, lover of the film Interstellar, and currently getting some personal growth back home in India. And thank you, of course, to everyone who shared their thoughts and stories on this podcast, or to me in a good old-fashioned regular talk that's not being recorded. And thank you whether we were talking in a quiet lab in Chicago or a really loud classroom in Texas. In all those cases, I am pretty sure I learned something, and you are the reason I've been doing this podcast. I keep on learning so much from each of you. I wish I could keep on doing it forever. I'd like to think that you're making me a better teacher, a better engineer, and maybe a better person. So here's to whatever comes next in 2020. Cheers, everybody.